Okay. We're on Facebook and YouTube and all that good stuff.
Awesome. All right. We are behind the scenes here with an episode of Run With It. We're going to get right into it. I'm Chris Justin.
And I'm Ethan Janney. And on today's episode, we have Jason Cherubini. He's the founder of Seraphim Associates International, a management consulting firm focusing on technology-based startups, and a founding partner of Dawn's Light, a media production and financing company. He has held multiple faculty appointments in the United States and Europe and is an avid proponent of the ed tech industry. Jason, welcome to Run With It.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
We are super excited to have you. Yeah. You've had incredible success building a number of companies over the years. You lived in New Orleans, which I'm excited to connect with you about too. Undergrad there, professorship. There's all sorts of experience that you've had to bring to the table. And that makes you eminently qualified to be able to share a new business idea and action steps with our listeners. That's the goal of our show. We'll spend some time at the end talking about some of your existing projects, but the main point of the show is to bring out a new business idea that you have been noodling on, given your extensive background in the business, in the business world. So let's get right into it. Tell us about the idea that you would like our listeners to run with.
Well, the idea has been one that's bopped around in my head for a number of years now in different iterations. The idea really has to do with household maintenance, building maintenance, and the increasing demand of people who either don't have the time, don't have the experience, or really just want it off of their plate. So really targeting the aging boomer demographic, as well as your younger demographics who are first-time home buyers, don't have the background or knowledge of what goes into the house. And I originally called it Higgins, the idea coming off of Magnum PI, the caretaker. Figured maybe there'd be some copyright issues there. So jumped, and it was packaged together under the name Major Domo, which was Higgins' title and really means head servant, the person who makes sure the house runs correctly. Now, when this idea first came to me, it's probably about 10 or 11 years ago. I was consulting with a facilities management company that was trying to put in a proprietary software where essentially every office they cleaned in an office building had a barcode. And they would go and have their janitors and their maintenance people scan the barcode, and it would bring up a to-do list of what had to be done in that office or that room that particular day. And it really took everything off of what was needed. You know, there really wasn't a lot of choice or thought. It was all there, and your project manager was able to adjust what their staff would do sitting at a computer, not having to walk a number of people room by room and say, this is what needs to be done. I actually think Radisson did something similar when they were implementing Six Sigma, the idea of getting always to that same result. And in my mind, it jumped, and could this be done on a person's home? Could it be there that they have checklists that really things need to be done at certain times that either people don't know about or forget about, and really what's going to remind them of that? And one of the first tasks that kind of jumped in my mind to hit people on was changing the batteries in your smoke detectors. So I was always told you do your taxes, you change the battery in your smoke detector. That was a task that had to be done. So really, how could you expand upon that? So the first iteration of the idea really was just, an app, something that made these lists out, but there really wasn't a business model for that. Basically, we're going to create an app for your home, but we don't know what's in your home. So we need to somehow have a way for you to enter that information to then build out all of these things. And then what are we going to charge you for it? It just didn't work. The idea was there, but it was a glorified checklist. There was a lot of other solutions that could have got there. So got put on the shelf, cool idea that never goes anywhere. I've got a shelf full of those ideas that maybe one day, or they're just fun things to talk about. But time moves on. we really started getting into this gig economy. We get into the point where you have Uber, where you have Airbnb, where you have all of these different services where you can hire somebody to do a task. So what about hiring people to handle these maintenance tasks for you? Looking around different competitors, there's a few options. There's things like Thumbtack's website. You can list through different plumbers, different electricians in your area. And then there's things like TaskRabbit, where you can just kind of get a handyman and book it up. So there's a little bit of demand for these type of things, but in both of those cases, in my mind, you had to know you needed that. So you had to know that you needed a plumber. So it's when your sink is leaking, or you had to know you needed an electrician. Oh, that electric socket isn't working. Or you had to know, oh, I want to put a new roof on my house. So in all of these cases, the demand was only there when it jumped out at you. How could we kind of combine these two, which is where the current iteration and where I think someone could run with this idea is that if you had an app, probably a freemium based app, where you were able to record your house, basically, these are my appliances, these are my utilities, this is my hot water heater, this is my air conditioner, and all of it enters in, and then it can set up reminders, notifications that would pop up and basically say, hey, it's been 6 months since you changed your air filter, you should do that. Would you want us to suggest somebody who will do that for you? And then essentially the same way that an Uber or another gig-based thing would work, they would then be able to suggest the person who would come and do it for you. The business would make money taking their percentage. And then while the person is there, you could essentially upcharge with the idea of, hey, I changed his air filter. You should also do this. You should also do that. And from the customer's point of view, they're not having to go through a list of handymen or local contractors. These people have essentially been vetted by the company. They're paying the company, so they're not worried about getting screwed, that their money's not going to be paid, or if there's a problem with the work, they've got some recourse. So essentially, it's a combination of that checklist type mentality with also the gig economy bringing it together.
There's a lot to unpack there. It's clear that you thought through this idea for a long time, and it is very well fleshed out, which is a great opportunity for the listener to take something and run with it, as you said. So I'm really excited to get into some action steps to summarize a little bit and bring out, just to make sure that we're highlighting the main idea here. It would be an app that would allow you to more easily manage the regular chores that you have or regular tasks that you have for your home. And within that app, you'd have the potential to hire people out. Is that right?
That's the general theory behind it. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I cut in here real quick? Just totally off the topic, technical request. Jason, we're getting a little bit of microphone noise when you move around. So just your movements are enthusiastic demonstrations and we're loving it, but if you get
become a lot stiffer, if you will, just tense up and
too many years in front of the classroom having to go big and wide, so I'll try to keep it nice and tight.
That's cool. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that in. But yeah, so we were talking about what exactly the app does. Is it helps you manage the tasks that are necessary and helps you hire people, basically.
Let me add a little bit about why I think something like this would be super valuable. I know that I would be a user. This is an indirect benefit, but with many people nowadays in relationships where both people are working, you don't have as much downtime to be able to take care of this. Back in the 20s or 30s, maybe there'd be one person who'd be staying at home who would manage all of these tasks. And now it's extremely difficult to manage that, especially my family. We have a 9-month-old now. And
why don't you just have him do it?
Yeah, well, he does a great job of scrubbing the floors with his butt, the kitchen floor. That's
Nice.
what he's good for. But yeah, and I know some friends who've had some marital strife as a result of the allocation of tasks like this. So anything that you can do to assuage that, I think that's really powerful. It's maybe a secondary benefit, but that would be appealing to friends of mine.
Are you guys familiar with the concept of a home warranty? Have you ever found this or looked this up? So I love the concept, but I looked it up and they all seem to be like some type of scam. They really don't seem like they're legitimate deals. You pay a fee, I think, on a monthly or yearly basis. And the idea is, if any of your appliances have an issue, they get replaced, or it kind of sounds too good to be true to me. Maybe Jason, you've had experience with these type of things. Maybe they're great. I don't know. But my point in bringing this up is I looked it up, and what that shows is that there's a demand for that kind of thing. For, hey, things go wrong, I don't know when they're going to go wrong, it's hard to keep track of all these things, and I would love for someone to be able to. I've often just wished when I bought a couple of my different properties, I would ask the person who did the inspection, hey, can you just come in on a yearly basis and do an inspection for me and just help me make sure nothing goes awry? I don't really do that kind of thing. Okay. But definitely I think there's a lot of space, and there's probably some demand, and maybe you could pick up, if you were marketing this, for example, those people that are looking and they're finding the home warranties and things. Okay, don't go for a home warranty. How about this app? That's really going to help you keep track of things.
And I think that's hitting that target. It's the people who don't have the time, who have the new houses, are worried about that. But the other major market that I think it would grow on is that aging population. That's, my mother lives in Boston, and luckily my brother-in-law is up there and he's able to stop by and take care of things at the house. But if he wasn't there, I don't know what I would do in terms of, my mother needs a light bulb changed, or she needs someone to come in and change the air filters in her forced hot air heater thing. So, I mean, where would I go on that? What would I get? And in some cases, some of these are relatively minor tasks. So you don't necessarily want to pay the plumber who's going to charge you $150 an hour to come out. But you don't want somebody who has no knowledge either. You want to make sure it's done correctly. It's not just somebody off the street. So I think there's that middle ground in there where you want these tasks done correctly. You don't want them to create new stress. The whole idea here is to lower your stress, to make your life easier.
Do you see any potential to grow this idea into additional services like booking flights, if we ever get to fly again, managing tax payments, other type of chores that aren't as much maintenance related tasks, but general things that you need to get done on a regular basis?
That's where I think it can grow. And that's a little bit of the blue sky involved, is I think in some level, there's certain adulting tasks that those of us who may not consider ourselves real adults kind of want to forget about or not want to do. Things like reallocate your stock portfolio. You should look at that once a year, or go through and update your beneficiary information, or all of these little things. I think those from the app side could be included as, these are reminders of things you should do, or hire someone. Or even on the flip side, there's certain things that aren't necessarily maintenance, but God, would it be nice to have someone take care of it. I mean, dropping things off and picking them up from the dry cleaner doesn't seem like it should be a major point of stress in my life. But if I forget to do it and I need to fit it in while I'm driving out, or if I need to make a special trip because that particular shirt happens to be there, it's a hassle. If I could hit a couple of buttons, have someone pick that up and drop that off for me, makes my life a lot easier. And some of these things 5 years ago, I would have been like, this is never going to work. But I can get Taco Bell delivered to me any hour of the day by paying a $5 delivery fee through Uber Eats. there definitely is the technology, the demand, the supply that these things could work.
I'm thinking that you rename the app Mom and Dad, and it's just accounting for the fact that nobody's growing up anymore, and it's just it's just something that reminds you of all of the adult things you have to do, and then you never have to grow up. You just have, and your mom and your dad don't have to be adults either.
It's a Ponzi scheme of adulting.
Yeah, exactly. Just leave adulting to the computers.
That brings up an interesting point in your last comment there, Jason, about the timing now when you can order using Uber Eats to get food delivered. You've had this idea for 10 or 11 years. What makes you say that this is the right time to launch it? And you've talked about this a little bit, but why? How do you know it now and not 3 years from now or 5 years from now?
It could be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, where it's going to be bigger. But I think we're at a point now where the technology can do it. That, I think, is not even really a question. Developing this technology, relatively easy, or it's been proven. And I think right now, both sides, the suppliers, your contractors, as well as your demand, the customers, have essentially been normalized to this idea of using an app to purchase, using online services to purchase things that 5 years ago, 10 years ago would have never thought about. And I think that's been expedited, really sped up through all of these lockdowns. People are ordering things online, who are having things delivered, are basically outsourcing huge parts of their lives that they wouldn't thought of before. So I think the technology is there, this whole idea of the gig economy is there, and people's comfort level with these really minimal services in some cases is all comfortable outsourcing it and paying the small fee associated with it. I mean, I know you can order all of your groceries and have somebody go to the grocery store and like be texting you on they don't have this, do you want that? Well, if you can do that with someone buying your groceries, I feel I can do that with someone coming to change my air filter or clean out my gutters.
Is this something? Why doesn't this idea exist already? It seems like it's one of those things that's too good to be true. It's obvious benefit. Feels like it should be out there. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there are two hurdles to get over. The first hurdle to get over is the idea that it can't be too narrow. I think with a lot of things, if you have a very narrow focus, it's not going to work. Because if I just told you, hey, there's an app that will pick up and drop off your dry cleaning, that's a whole extra app for me to get into to try to set up. Maybe not. But if I say, hey, it's going to handle all of these tasks, well, that's a little bit more interesting. So I think things like Uber and then Uber Eats and some of these were able to take off because those singular tasks were something that everyone used. They had the demand. But a dry cleaning or a gutter cleaning or some of these things maybe isn't big enough. So I think you need to approach it from a wider range of tasks, which I haven't seen anyone do right now, at least from the app side. Like I said, you have a TaskRabbit that basically they'll do anything. You have a Thumbtack where I can go online and I can find the licensed contractors. So there's versions of it, but I don't think anything has really brought it together with the technology, like the Uber or like the Airbnb. I think the other big hesitation on it, and this goes with really any app of this type, is the fact that it's a bilateral search. We need to hit a critical mass. You need a certain number of customers to make it worth the suppliers, the vendors, to sign up for and bring this on. And you need a certain number of suppliers so it's worth it to the customers. So if you get, you look at Uber. Uber started as, we are a black car service in San Francisco and New York City. They didn't start off saying, hey, we will be everywhere all the time. It grew to that, but they really had a narrow slice. So I think with something like this, you would almost want to narrow slice it in geographic regions and really build out a test location or two. And then as it's popular there, word of mouth, it could then grow. But I think that's the other big hurdle to get over. How do you get an area that has enough customers and enough contractors that it's beneficial to both sides?
I'm going to use this shtick again. How do you get into an area that has enough customers and vendors on both sides?
It costs money. It is really the thing of it. When you go into an area, you need to basically make it worth both sides initially, and you're going to eat any revenue at the start. So things that people are going to need anyways. So your customer side, you essentially need to cover their cost, give them a free service, and you're paying the vendors for it. So a part of the rollout, and this is where some of these things can get expensive. It's not in the development, it's not in the initial, but in those marketing blitzes, it's, hey, customer, you need someone to clean your gutters. That would normally cost you whatever it is, $100. You would pay that. You can do it for free if you sign up for our app. Hey, you person who would normally clean the gutters, you're going to bill them, but we're really going to be paying it. So essentially, you have a high customer acquisition cost initially, but after they download your app, after they register, after they use it, you're there, you've got them. They may not be daily active users, but if once a month, twice a month, a notification pops up, hey, you should be doing this. Hey, you should, flush your pipes. You should handle this bit of maintenance. You'll be able to start to measure, okay, that's turning into those sales.
That makes sense for I can picture that being a venture-backed business. When you say it requires a lot of money to get into a market, I also want to throw in an idea for bootstrapping it potentially. Maybe if you had this app where it just started with the ability for you to track the home maintenance needs that you had, change your air filter every 2 months and drain your your hot water heater, flush that piping once a year, things like that. And you just had that central source that collected all that data, and you could see, so you knew what you needed to be on top of. That seems like that could be a way for users to derive some value from this solution without having all the service providers on the other side. And then let's say you had 10,000 or 100,000 users or something like that, then it would be easy to get service providers. Now, that may not be the best way to go because it could be that some other company leapfrogs you. That's a very slow way to build something like this. Do you think that would be a valid approach to how would you weigh the risk benefit of doing the slower bootstrap route versus venture?
I think you're correct. And that's part of the idea of where the plan originally was, it just being the app that kind of runs through and lists these things out. I think that free version of the app is going to get you some amount of a user base. The only issue with that user base, with it being the app, is trying to get that geographically concentrated to then build the supplier demand on the contractor side. So if I was going to bootstrap this, and if I had the technical ability to do it, you could create the app, set that up, have that out there, start to build a user base, and then use that growing user base to try to get some contractors or to try to then get a Series A round to come in to then grow that money-making side of it. Because if you had a few 100,000 users of this app, I think it would be easy to then set up a separate revenue stream to a venture company and say, we have these users, they're using this app. This is a way we can monetize what's coming off of it. I mean, similar to LinkedIn when they went for their Series B, it was we have this massive user base. We want to expand into these monetization routes. And that's where the money came in and to be used.
You know, another thing that I'm thinking of in terms of bootstrapping and getting started and getting money, cash flow going into a project like this is you wait for those kind of big expenses that come up for people that remind them that they need to pay attention on the habitual side of things, you know? So, oh, you need a new heater because you didn't replace your heater air filters. And, oh, wow, you could have just done it for, you know, less than $100 a year or something, right? And you sell people on the fact that they're going to save a lot of money by keeping up with these things. And you say, this is a subscription. So I'm saying it's almost like a home warranty kind of thing. And those home warranties are, you know, I think you can pay maybe $50 a month or something like that. But you get people in and you get them on a monthly recurring, and they are paying at first, you know, to resolve an issue up front. But at least then you can have at least some projected income from those potential customers. The other thing I wanted to say is this seems like a good something if somebody wants to bootstrap it or if they want to raise money, either way, somebody's really connected in their neighborhood. You know, somebody who knows a lot of the local businesses, somebody that has a lot of friends, maybe they're a family person that knows a lot of the families in the area. It seems like a good place to start because you would know how to connect people together. Hey, you need that done. You need this taken care of. I have a handful of people, and we can sort of get a system together. And so bootstrapping wise, you could start with a handful of families or something like that, where, you know, it's almost like a co-op for repairs and maintenance. We put this little co-op together, everybody chips in $50 a month, and I'll go and I'll hire the people. They'll come into everybody's house, they'll change air filters, they'll change batteries, we'll get all this stuff taken care of. So, and then create an app around that, you know, after the fact to support whatever system that you threw together.
Let's talk about some of the action steps here that a listener can take. What are some things that someone can do? Let's say they don't have a ton of resources themselves. So if they needed money, they might have some friends and family that they could tap into. They may have a full-time job already. So this would be something that they would at least start on the side. What are some things that someone can do from that place to get this idea going?
I think one of the first things I do is look at, you know, some of the Google search keys, some of the words that people are looking for. What type of maintenance is popping up? What are people needing to do in their house? And put together a list of kind of what these tasks could be. So what the kind of service offerings are, what people need to do in home maintenance in a regular, and get an idea of what the exact services would be, and then what contractors in the area would charge to do them. I think from that, you should be able to put together some type of revenue projections on what it's going to cost or what could be earned off of every customer, and then what the company's fee would be, you know, whether it's a 15 or 30% off the top, go the full Apple route, as long as you don't piss off Fortnite, and everything else that's involved on that. That would give you an idea there. I mean, roughly maintenance costs on a house is between 1% and 4% of the house value per year. So you could do that just back of the envelope calculations. If you're in an area where the average house price is $250,000, on average, those people are going to be spending $2,500 in maintenance. So if you could capture one house at that $2,500 of maintenance, you take your 20%, you're making $500 for every acquired customer. So I think that would give you a lot of your forecast numbers on where is the validity of this. I think the other side of it is kind of piecing together the technical aspect. not necessarily just the getting of vendors, getting of contractors to come in, but what value are you adding with your, with your checklist, with your task list? How is this going to be more than just me putting things in my calendar? Where is that value add? I mean, there's some apps that basically have you walk through your house and use your camera and inventory things for potential insurance purposes. Maybe you can take some version of that where you're inventorying what you have, and it then creates a task list off of it. And maybe you can use the readily available information from the manufacturers to create those lists. So I think there could be a value add there as well.
Yeah,
And
I think
those are
those
all
are great.
things I'm thinking you could do relatively inexpensively, and it's, that's elbow grease. That's your bootstrapping to give that value add on what that initial rollout could be.
At what point do you start approaching service providers?
I think I go as early as possible on what are their thoughts on it? Where do they have free time? Where is the openings in their schedule? How would they bill for some of these small tasks? I think that could be another area to kind of get what their feel of it is. I have a acquaintance, a plumber, master plumber, but his schedule really is he's either doing these big installs, he's doing emergency calls, or he's sitting on his porch not doing anything. So depending on where it is, some of these little maintenance tasks he would have time for. He'd happily take at a lower price if they fit into his schedule. So things like having my outdoor plumbing, hoses and stuff blown out so they don't crack when it freezes, as long as it's a, hey, get to it whenever, it's a cheap task. If it's a, I need you to be here Tuesday at 3:00, it's a $150 service call. So I think getting that feel for some of these service providers, how they would view it, how quickly they'd be able to respond, how far in advance they'd want to schedule, I think you could then almost have a partnership with them, and you could be developing it to their needs, not developing what you think is best and then having to adjust that whole side of it.
From a validation standpoint, how would you determine that a user would actually use a system like this or be willing to pay for services like that? Because what we described, it sounds like a lot of work to be able to do that research and to contact vendors to find out what type of services they need. And then as you were talking there, I was thinking, well, if I had to pay someone $15, $25 to blow out my hoses before winter to make sure that they don't freeze, I don't know that I would do that. And I don't know that I would do that for a number of other tasks. But maybe I'm in the minority there. Maybe a lot of people would. How would you answer that question?
I think part of that validation is kind of looking at what services are already offloaded that otherwise you would think maybe wouldn't. I think part of that anecdotally, there is some validation on people are willing to pay service charges for things they could do themselves. So again, back to the Taco Bell delivery example. It's if I wanted Taco Bell for lunch today, I may decide I'm just going to go on Uber Eats. I'll pay the $5, even though I could go get in my car. I could drive the 7 minutes down the street and do it. So I think anecdotally, there's some validation, but when it comes to the actual services, I think that's where the app jumping up and reminding you, and in some cases nudging you that these things need to be done, in theory, could push on services that otherwise may not be purchased. So I'm thinking again, back to the blowing out of the outdoor pipes. I know in the fall I need to do it. So it's on my list, but if I have other things to do, that's going to get pushed, and that's going to get pushed, and that's going to get pushed until I hear, looking at the news, oh, tonight's a freeze warning, and I go, crap, I need to get it done in the next 3 hours. So I think in some of those cases where we may naturally go, oh, I'm not going to pay $20 for that. But if it saves me the time and I can do it. So I think part of that is going to be validated once you have it up, when the people are clicking, what would it cost for me to have this done? And I think that's where you're going to set it up for a lot of repeat. You know, if someone clicked to look what it would cost, then the app the next week reminds and say, hey, did you do this? Hey, it's been a whole week you haven't done it. You sure you don't want to hire somebody? And kind of give that nudge to push those sales.
Another
go ahead, Chris.
Another approach that comes to mind would be, is there a potential to have a subscription model where I said I probably wouldn't pay $20 to have someone blow out my my hoses, but I may pay $200 a month to have all of the home maintenance tasks offloaded from my mental bandwidth to know, and maybe I get a certain number of credits where you get 4 hours worth of tasks done per month. And if you go over that, you have to pay. But if they were all lumped together and I don't have to make that decision for each individual task, I think I would be more likely to do that. What do you think about that pricing model?
I think that's potential. And one of the kind of growth avenues on this and kind of thought process, which isn't as flushed out, was essentially a franchise model where you could have a person in an area kind of handle everything. So you're going to pay in that monthly service charge. And it's not even I know these tasks need to get done. I need to check them. I need to look at this to have someone come in. It's hey, app, hey, service, you just handle my entire house. So that way you have essentially hired one person. You meet with them, you like them, whatever else, and then they just do everything. Similar to, a superintendent for an apartment in a building, they're going to handle everything regular maintenance. And if I have a problem, I'm not going through looking for the plumber. I call my super and he handles it. So I'm kind of thinking that's where it could be, that subscription model where it's all essentially offloaded to somebody else where they're handling it.
I just wanted to go back to the idea you were saying earlier of when people are searching for what does it cost to do this and what does it cost to do that. I think a great feature of a system like this is to say, and if it's going to remind people, are you going to do that? Is also to be able to remind people, and here's some statistics on what happens if you don't do that now. It's going to cost you a good example, things could cost a couple $100, right? Oh, there's something you should do right now. It costs a couple $100. And then you think, well, that's not $20. So I'm going to wait. I'm not sure whether I should do that. And instead of something just saying an app just nudging you and saying, hey, do you still want to do this thing? Do you still want to do this? Because in 6 months, typically the people who don't do this spend $24,000, or whatever, just to give somebody those statistics and the hard data and the motivation to just say, okay, got it. Roger that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it taken care of. I also find that it depends on which service providers you're talking about, but that's great for the service providers that provide those services, because it motivates people to do something which people don't typically get motivated to do. They don't have that present motivation sometimes.
Okay, we are going to experiment here a little bit with a new section of the podcast. It's going to be rapid fire questions for you, Jason. You do not know what these questions are, which you are very game to participate here. So don't feel too much pressure, but we're going to try and keep it quick here. So you ready for the first question?
Teenage crush. No, just
Alyssa Milano. That one's easy.
Obviously, come on. All right,
she's mine.
That might end up being the first question that we ask. Explain the idea to your mom.
Oh God, Mom, you're going to be able to, instead of calling me to ask how something is fixed, you're going to be able to look on the app and have someone come and fix it.
Perfect. Is this a 6, 7, or 8+ figure business?
I think it's going to in the 8+ range, but it depends on how many services are added on. Again, I think back to Uber when I first heard of it. I'm like, black car services are great in San Francisco and New York, but it's never going to grow. Now it's everywhere because you're able to add things on. I think this is similar in that way. If people are using it, there's countless services that could be incorporated and could be built through this.
Who is your first customer?
I think my first customer on this is actually going to be empty nesters, people who have a home, but they no longer want to deal with it anymore. So they know what the tasks are that need to be done. They know what the work that goes into it is, but they're deciding that, hey, you know what? It's worth the $20 that I don't spend the afternoon getting dirty doing it. I'd rather hire this out. And especially with empty nesters, people in their 50s and 60s now being more technologically savvy, I don't think it's that far out of their comfort zone to say that they're going to be comfortable using this service to get those things done.
What is the biggest risk of this idea?
Ooh, technologically, I think it's a low risk. I think the tech can be there to be done. I think marketing and getting both sides involved, that's the biggest challenge. But I think if it started to work well, it would be somebody else coming in and kind of taking it over. Because in my mind, if this was working well and this was, mom and dad app or whatever it happens to be, or it's Uber home maintenance, I think with the brand recognition of Uber or someone else, that would be a big competition.
Last question for you. What is the first action a listener should take?
I think the first action really would be putting together the pricing model on it, kind of figuring out what the numbers could be to then validate, would this be worthwhile moving forward? And that's, my accounting and finance side, I always want to see the revenue and income first. So that's where I'd start to validate and justify that the business could grow to the point that it's worth it and that the costs to get there make that revenue worth it.
Success. You made it through the first rapid fire question round on. Run with it. Thank you. We are coming up on time here. Jason, tell us a little bit more about what you're currently working on and where listeners can go to find you.
Currently, I've got a media production company, make a lot of made-for-TV and Netflix-type movies. So I don't have to ask you to do much. Stay at home, sit on the couch, keep streaming movies, try some new things. Our newest one, Money Plane with Adam Edge Copeland and Kelsey Grammer, is out. Spend a couple of bucks, rent that if you have nothing better to do. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to. You can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com, Jason Cherubini, Instagram, Facebook, everything else at Jason Cherubini. And if you ever want to read really boring stuff about accounting and the film business, my blog, jasoncherubini.com, has me pontificating on all that stuff.
Very cool.
Perfect.
To the listener out there who is on board with this idea, they would love to have a major drummo, or they see the value in their friends having someone like this. Their friends need some help from mom and dad. Take some action. Follow through on the steps that Jason has outlined here. Let us know what you've done. Email us at update@runwithit.fm. Everyone who responds will get access to a private Facebook group of action takers, and one lucky listener will earn a free mentoring session with Jason and potentially a business partnership on this idea. Jason, thank you very much for your time here. It's been a pleasure. You were very insightful with this idea that you've shared, and I'm really excited to see what the listeners come up with. So to the listener out there, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Great.
All right, I'll log us off the Facebook and YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to hit stop recording on Zencastr to make sure that